Shalom and welcome to the Fan's Perspective. My name is Eliana. I'm a former IDF combat commander and a die-hard Commanders fan, and today's the day that we actually break down the 2026 NFL Draft. We've spent months looking forward to it, and it's just these quick 3 days that are just gone in a flash, but today I'm going to be starting giving my grades for the teams. We're going to go division by division, so we're going to do the East. So both AFC and NFC East will be broken down today, and then we'll do the rest of the divisions in future episodes. Before I start, I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of you in the audience. We've actually gone into the triple digits. We've gone over 100 subscribers. And I've only started this podcast just over a month ago, so I want to thank you all. I did not think that we would grow this fast, this quickly. So just a huge, huge shout out to you, and thank you. I couldn't do this without you. And now let's get into why everyone's here. Okay, no one's here to hear me babble. Everyone's here to talk about the draft, because that's what's important in life. All right, so let's start without further ado. All right, here we go. We're going to start off with the NFC East. So we're going to start with Dallas. We're going to go alphabetical order. I'm starting off with Caleb Downs. This is like way to make me depressed as heck. Basically, I love Caleb Downs. Absolutely love Caleb Downs. Was heartbroken that he went to Dallas at 11 as a Commanders fan, but this is honestly just a great pick for Dallas. The trade up, I don't know if that was completely necessary. Maybe some teams were sniffing around and they got wind of that and decided they were going to trade up. Maybe Jerry Jones just got antsy and nervous and decided he was going to trade up no matter what. There was talk before the draft that they would trade up maybe to 3, maybe to 6 to get a defensive stud. And they didn't have to. They just waited for Caleb to basically fall in their laps. They decided to flip spots with Miami, and they get Caleb Downs, top 3 or 4 player in this class. Extremely high floor, and I think an extremely high ceiling. This is probably the smartest player on Dallas's defense. Maybe with the exception of Dak is the smartest player on Dallas's team. And day one is going to change this defense, going to change this team for the better, sadly, and is going to be a difference maker. So absolutely love that pick. Great value at pick number 11. Now they got Malachi Lawrence at pick number 23. Now that wasn't their original pick. Their original pick was 20. They decided to trade back with Philly. Now I have a problem with that. First of all, it's in division. Okay, like incest, that's gross. We don't do that. Secondly, it was kind of obvious who Philly was trading up for, okay? They wanted a receiver, not shocking. A.J. Brown is going to be leaving after basically June 1st. We're at the end of April, so 31, 32 days, something like that. A.J. Brown will no longer be an Eagle, and all signs point to him being with the Patriots. So that means that you have 180-pound Devontae Smith. Very good player, but not necessarily someone who you want to be your undisputed number 1. They have Marquise Hollywood Brown. They have Wicks, I believe, who they traded with the Packers for, or one of the other Packer receivers. Honestly, I don't remember. I'm sorry. I think it's Wicks. And that's your receiving trio. Jahan Dotson left. A.J. Brown's going to leave. So that's 2 of your top 3 receivers last year. That's questionable. So if you're Dallas, why are you giving Philly the opportunity to now improve their receiving room, to improve an extremely important position on their field, so then you can get 2 4th-round picks in return and go back 3 spots and probably select the player you were going to pick anyway? I do not understand the logic in that. I really don't. I think maybe you got 2 more 4th-round picks, but now you have a player in your division who you probably do not want to be seeing twice a year. You're just letting your divisional rival, who is 2 years removed from winning the Super Bowl, to now improve their team and be able to move on from one of their star players in a much easier and smoother way. I think that's a big negative. In addition to that, Malachi Lawrence at 23 is a little rich. Now, I know there was talk about him at the back end of the first round, but 23 is almost like middle. Like, if you were saying 29, 30, okay, but 23 I think is a little too much. You have players who I liked more, Gabe Yakis, Zion Young. Now they went later, like into the 2nd round, and we'll get to one of those players later, but he's extremely athletic, has a very high ceiling, not a very good run defender, and they decided to just dip their toe in at edge like 3 separate times. Edge is an important position, but you had Micah Parsons on your team. Like, you could have just done this crazy, I know it's psycho, but paid your player who you drafted, who is top 5 at his position, and instead of trading him away and be like, oh, we got 2 first-round picks from it, and you used one of them on an edge, and then you used a 3rd and a 4th on 2 other edges. You could have just had the one. I don't know. That's me. I don't think that's great resource allocation for Dallas. I think Malachi Lawrence is a solid player, or borderline first-round talent, extremely athletic, has a high ceiling. Is he going to reach that ceiling? I don't know. Maybe with Caleb Downs it'll help, I'll tell you that much. So not a huge fan, gotta say, and they lose points for that trade back. Now, Jayshon Barham was their 3rd-round pick. I don't know if he's playing edge. They announced him at edge. He might be playing linebacker for them. This is a team that is in desperate desperate need of linebacker play. They did trade a fifth for D. Winters from San Francisco, so maybe that helps clog a need a little bit. He's from Michigan. He's been solidly productive. Third round pick is a little rich for me. 92 is a little rich. I would have liked him more in the fourth, but this is back end of the third. I'm not going to be splitting hairs over something like that. Drew Shelton, tackle out of Penn State, has a lot of measurables, is a long-time starter at Penn State. So you have experience, you have measurables, he's in a fourth round. I don't mind it at all. I think every team should draft an offensive lineman at least once. In every draft they do, offensive line is so important. It is such an injured position. And if you don't have a good offensive line, your whole team is going to crash and burn. So they had 3 fourth-round picks. I don't mind that they used one on an offensive lineman. Now they get Devin Moore, corner out of Florida. I thought this was a really good pick. He's like 6'2", very athletic. He's that kind of nickel back that everyone's trying to look for. In this draft, you'll see there's a lot of players like that who were drafted in because it's a coveted position. So getting him in the fourth round, I think, was solid value. I think he's going to be a good player and altogether good pick and a position where Dallas needs. Basically, any position on the defensive side is a position that Dallas needs. So good for Dallas there. Now, LT Overton was drafted with their final fourth-round pick. He is an edge out of Alabama. He had a lot of hype going into the year. He didn't necessarily live up to that hype. And he's more of kind of like a run-stuffing edge, maybe more of a first two-down edge. Probably does not give you as much pass rush ability. Now, if you're looking at their edge class as a whole, you have Malachi Lawrence, who's more of a pass rusher, very athletic, high ceiling. You then have LT Overton, who's kind of the inverse of that, not extremely athletic, but a stout edge rusher against the run. And then Jayshawn Barham, maybe a linebacker, maybe a pass rusher, kind of a tweener type. I just think you could have had Micah Parsons. You didn't have to worry about that. No, Micah Parsons was not an elite run defender, but that's okay. If you get 14 sacks a year, you don't need to be an elite run defender. So I think triple dipping at edge is a little much. Double dipping is fine. Triple dipping, I think, is a little bit much. How many edges are going to keep on your team? 5, 6? If so, half of them were drafted in this class. What about Donovan Izaraku, who was drafted last year? And other edge rushers you have on the team, do you not want to see them develop? Rashawn Gary, you traded for. I think it's kind of a logjam at edge. You have now drafted Donovan Izaraku with the second-round pick. You've traded picks for Rashawn Gary, and now you have 3 players who you use a fourth, and only more valuable picks from that. That's a lot of resources in at edge, and I don't know if they're really going to be producing in a way that'll make that worth it for them. Now, our final pick in the 7th round was Anthony Smith. He was basically like an undrafted free agent type player. It's a 7th round pick. I'm not going to lose sleep over that. He's 6'2", he's got good size, and that's basically all there is on him. So not surprisingly, only 2 of their picks were on offense. The rest were on defense. They had 3 edges, 2 secondary players, whether Devin Moore plays corner or safety or nickel, who knows. Caleb Downs, absolutely incredible player. And honestly, Caleb Downs on his own is saving this draft. I'm going to be nice. I can't believe I'm being nice to the Cowboys. I'm giving them a B+. And I think if Caleb Downs was not the pick there at 11, this would probably be in the C's type of draft. Caleb Downs is incredible, and he on his own is making this a B+. And in the universe of the A's, Malachi Lawrence, I think, is a reach, plus that trade is horrible. Jayshawn Barham and LT Overton, this is just too many edges. They're okay players and more or less valuable at these slots, but 3 edges is too much. Drew Shelton, I think, is solid. Anthony Smith, I think, is a reach, but it's a 7th round pick, and Devin Moore is a solid pick. So I just think the edges just bring this down, plus the trade with Philly, so it becomes a B+. All right, we're going to move on to our next NFC East team, and that is your New York Giants. All right. The Giants, they started off with a bang. They got Arvil Reese at pick 5. He just fell, was the top player on their board. So they picked him, which makes sense. Good for them. Then you have Francis Mauigoa, who they selected at 10 overall, was worthy of the 10th overall pick. They decided that improving that offensive line is extremely important for them, which makes sense. You have a young quarterback. You have Cam Scadaboo, who looked very good at his rookie season. Is he going to stay healthy? I don't know. But offensive line is always important. You get an edge, you get a tackle/guard, but a really good offensive lineman. Those are 2 of the 4 most important positions on the field. Then Colton Hood, who I thought was great value in the 2nd round. But we'll get to him a little bit later. Absolutely amazing value at 37, but they have the luxury to pick best player available in that situation. We'll see. Malachi Fields, they get in the 3rd round, but they trade up to do so. He was picked with the 74th overall pick, so top 10 picks of the 3rd round. They then finally addressing to your defensive line, which is a huge gaping hole for them before the Dexter Lawrence trade, and now with the Dexter Lawrence trade is just a crater in the middle of their roster. They decide they're going to throw in Bobby Jamison Travis with the 6th round pick. I don't know. He's not very athletic. He's not very good against the run. 6th round pick. I don't know if that's what you want. I was not thrilled with this pick if I was a Giants fan, and I think it was just kind of they were desperate. They needed a defensive tackle. No one on the board was really worth it, and they just decided, all right, we're going to go with him and hope for the best. Now, J.C. Davis out of Illinois, if you can get a 4-year starter in the 6th round, I think that's great value, so good for them. Offensive linemen, just keep chugging at it. Now, Jack Kelly was their final 6th round pick. They did not have any 7s. They had 3 6th round picks, and ended up getting him linebacker out of BYU. He's not extremely athletic and doesn't have extremely amazing instincts, but he's just like solid and tough, and he's just one of those linebacker types. He's going to be a really good special teamer, and maybe he can give you some upside to be a part-time starter if someone goes down with an injury. So this is what I'll say. Arvell Reese with a pick number 5, I think he's a great player. Now, do the Giants have a plan for how to utilize him? Because I don't think they thought he was going to be there. I kind of think they're going to play him more at linebacker, and then on certain packages, either have him blitz or have him line up on edge. This is not a bad landing spot for a Commanders fan. For an opposing team, I don't mind this so much because I think he's an extremely talented player, but he will only be able to play so many snaps. When you have Brian Burns and you have Abdul Carter and Kayvon Thibodeau, there's only so many pass rushing snaps that Arvell Reese can do, and he's not a coverage linebacker. That's not his strength. So I don't mind this so much. Now, for the Giants, you had to take him 5th overall. This was just the best player on the board at that point. But if you're really thinking about using him as a linebacker, I would probably say Sonny Styles was the better linebacker, and I'm curious if maybe they would have wanted to draft Sonny Styles. This could also be me looking at this from a very, very narrow view of this year, and Kayvon Thibodeau is probably not here next year, and if you have a 3 pass rush cycle of Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Reese, that's really good, and then you can also move on from Burns, and he has a very big salary per year, obviously. He was one of the leaders in sacks last year, and then you have Abdul Carter and Arvell Reese as your 2 edges. That's not bad at all. So maybe I'm just looking at this as too narrow a view of only this year, and maybe he'll be better in the future, but I still like the pick. I don't mind the pick, and if I was the Giants, I'd probably do the same thing. I just don't think this year that he's going to make as much of an impact as you'd expect from someone who's drafted 5th overall. Now, Francis Maui Noah, he's probably going to play guard this year, similar to Arvell Reese, with an eye of maybe switching positions in the future once older, more expensive veterans either move on or get hurt or who knows what. They have Illuminor, who's the right tackle, who they signed on a pretty team-friendly deal, but he's getting up there in age, so I'm assuming that this is he'll be playing guard basically until Illuminor leaves, and then he can bounce out to tackle, and you have the heir apparent in-house. That's a very good pick for 10 overall. Now with Colton Hood, great player, great value at 37. And position of need, position of value, all good things. But you had Christian Miller and Lee Hunter available at defensive tackle. Now I understand Caden McDonald was picked just ahead of you. Houston traded up to get Caden McDonald because everyone knew that Giants needed a defensive tackle. So I thought, all right, let's say Caden McDonald was the highest on the Giants board. They'll just get their 2nd highest player. That's what I assumed was going to happen. And they decided no. Colton Hood is too good a prospect to pass over. And maybe they're right. But that interior defensive line is scary. They were one of the worst rush defenses in the league last year, and that was with Dexter Lawrence. So imagine what they're going to be without Dexter Lawrence. Okay, you might have Arvell Reese, and you might have Ryan Burns, and all of your pass rushers. But it doesn't matter, because any team will just line up, run the ball for 6 yards to carry, and just keep moving the chains every 2 downs. That's what they're going to do. And you're not going to have a chance to get after the passer, especially if you're such a bad run defense. So I don't know. I think they needed to invest. I don't think they had the luxury to take best player available. I think they needed to get an interior defensive line. Even though I love Colton Hood as a player, I don't know if they had the luxury to be able to make that pick. Malachi Fields, they selected in the 3rd round. Now, receiver is a need for them. Darnell Mooney is currently their number 2. He had a very up and down year last year, had a lot of drop issues. Now, Malik Neighbors, apparently his injury and recovery is taking a little bit longer than people like me would anticipate. I don't know what happened there behind the scenes, and an ACL is not something that you can just bounce back from, even though we have seen a ton of players be able to come back after 10 months or so. That doesn't mean that happens for everyone. So there are some questions about whether he's going to be available and whether he's going to be fully healthy in week 1 of the season. So getting another receiver, first of all, just in case Darnell Mooney plays like he did last year, and also to alleviate some pressure, hopefully in those first early weeks where Malik Neighbors doesn't have to command 10 to 15 targets a game, and you can kind of move the ball around. They decided to go Malachi Fields. Now, Malachi Fields was not the highest player on my board. I would have rather, the Bells or Ted Hurst there at that slot. Now, not only did I not love him at that spot, I don't love the trade up for him even more. You give up assets for a receiver who I don't think was for sure top 3, maybe borderline top 5 at the position at the time that he was drafted and who was available. So I'd like the receiver pick. I don't love who the receiver pick was and what they had to give up to get him. Now, I kind of went through their day 3 picks. So at this point in time, I think a lot of people have given the Giants A's and A pluses. And I see that. Their top 2 picks, honestly, their top 3 picks are all really good. Like, really, really good. But I think Colton Hood was a pick that they did not necessarily have the luxury to take. I don't like Bobby Jamison Travis, and he's probably going to be their number 2 or number 3 D tackle right now, which is scary for a 6th round pick. I don't know. Doesn't jump off the board in my mind. And then Malachi Fields, who maybe is a good player and a good role player, but I think you could have gotten more value at that. So I'm giving them an A-. And I think that's hard to do when you have the caliber of players like Arvell Reese and Francis Mauigoa. But I think the others really pull this down. And I do think I'm being fair to them and nice to them. This is not me like, oh, they're a division rival, so I'm going to screw them. I'm giving them an A-. And like, guys, I'm sorry. I could probably talk myself into a B+, but I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to give the Giants an A- here with their draft. Now, moving on, we have Philly, sadly cries. All right, Philadelphia, they have got a lot of picks. Look at all these picks that they have. And in addition to that, they traded 2 fourths for Mekhi Lemon. They also traded a 3rd for Jonathan Grenard. So that's 3 picks. 3, picks between 80 and 130 or something. And they still have all of these draft picks, guys. I don't like it. So, Mekhi Lemon, great pick. Great pick. I don't know what else to say. It's a great pick. You have to give up 2 4th-round picks, but it's worth it. Now, my only negative to this is he's a slot receiver who works in the middle of the field. Jalen Hurts, in his first, 6 years in the league, has not proven to be an amazing passer in between the numbers. He's more of a shot player, go off of play action, chuck it deep to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's not really Mekhi Lemon's game. He's more in the middle, working the slot. Maybe Jalen Hurts can adjust and be able to unlock that side of the field more. Or maybe this is just a bad fit. I don't know. Similar kind of thing with Eli Stowers. Now, tight end is a need for this Philadelphia team. Their top 2 tight ends signed 1-year deals are going to be free agents next year, namely Dallas Goedert. So Eli Stowers is a tight end. He's more basically a glorified receiver, extremely athletic, very good hands, played for Vanderbilt and had a really, really good year for them and ran like a 4.5 40-yard dash, absolutely insane, and a good player. But again, tight ends normally work the middle of the field. Is that something that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to do? If Jalen Hurts can make the adjustment with their new offensive coordinator and be able to target that middle of the field, both of these picks will be great. Slam dunk, home run, all of that. If not, this will be a huge, huge misstep for Philadelphia that they did not draft players based on the strengths of their quarterback and the strengths of their team and decided just to kind of fit a square peg in a circle hole. And I honestly don't know which way it's going to go. So that's my question on it. So I'm not quite as in love as the rest of the, draft world is. I think it could be great, but I'm kind of more of a let's wait and see type for those 2 picks. Now, Markel Bell's a 3rd-round pick out of Miami. He's huge, massive, 6'9", long-time starter at Miami. I like the pick, but I don't like the pick, guys. If he can develop and become the heir apparent to Lane Johnson, and you have 6'8", Jordan Mailata on the left, and then 6'9", Markel Bell on the right, that's horrifying, okay? That's literally terrifying. So we'll see if that happens or not, whether he can develop. He has the tools, and if I trust anyone to develop offensive linemen, sadly, it's the Eagles. So this might end up being a really good pick. I think a 3rd round is honestly a pretty good spot to select him. I don't think this is a reach. I think this is solid value. I think Philadelphia can get the most out of. Now, they take Cole Payton in the 5th. I don't love that pick. Now, Philadelphia is always kind of, I don't know if I'm going to say overvalued, but has put in a lot of draft capital to that quarterback position. Now, they're doing that again with Cole Payton. He's a lefty out of North Dakota State. He's extremely athletic, a Taysom Hill type. I think he played running back there for a year or so before he transitioned to quarterback. So this could work out well. It could be a Taysom Hill, and if you have the correct pieces and the correct offensive philosophy to be able to get the most out of him, great. Now, my question is, you have an athletic quarterback in Jalen Hurts, so why do you need to get an athletic quarterback to do some of these things, right? If you are the Rams and Matthew Stafford, right, and you have more of an older quarterback, more of a statue quarterback, not quite as athletic and mobile, it makes sense. You have this kind of change of pace quarterback who can do your sneaks and can do your runs and your RPOs and all those different things. Now, you have Hurts, who's one of the more athletically gifted quarterbacks in the league. He's got very good legs, very good power, as we all know from the tush push. So I don't really see quite the reason to get another athletically gifted quarterback. Maybe it's just so then Jalen Hurts isn't put in these dangerous situations. and he's more of a chance to stay healthy. Now, that could be a thing, and that would make a lot of sense. But I think 5th round's a little rich for... Is he your backup? Is he your third string? Andy Dalton was traded for this year from the Panthers. They have their backup quarterback who everyone loves for some reason. He had a really bad game against Washington in Week 18. And now I'm assuming he's obviously making the roster as a 5th round pick. So are you keeping 4 quarterbacks? Are you cutting like Dalton? But I don't understand that. Jalen Hurts is a veteran. You don't need to bring Dalton to be the veteran in the room. Hurts should be the veteran in the room. And if not, then this will kind of lead into that whole, is Jalen Hurts a good leader? All of the questions surrounding Philadelphia and Hurts and his relationship with A.J. Brown and all these things, if we're bringing in Andy Dalton just to be kind of the veteran voice in the room. So I don't know. Not a huge fan of that 5th round pick. Now, their 6th round pick, they had to get a Georgia player. So they got Micah Morris, huge, massive guard, not super athletic, but just a massive human being. And it's Philly, an offensive lineman. They'll probably figure it out. Now with their 7th round pick, they got Cole Wisniewski out of Texas Tech. He surprisingly did not get a combine invite, even though he was a safety and contributed a ton to that team for one of the better defenses in college football last year. He forces a lot of turnovers. Now, he's not uber athletic, so maybe he's just kind of a special teams guy. Maybe he can develop, but maybe he's the Reed Blankenship replacement. He's another white safety. Yeah, who knows? 7th round pick. It's all good. Now they get Uar Bernard, who, if you have not heard of him, is the absolute freak from Nigeria. If you put his weight, height, speed, all of his combine numbers basically against Myles Garrett, he actually comes up on top more often than not, which is shocking, right? So you're asking yourself, how the heck is this man available in the 7th round? And it's this really a minor thing of like, he's never played organized football. So that's probably a reason why he wasn't drafted until the 7th round. He's never played football, but he can jump really high. But he's really fast, but he's all muscle, but he's really tall, so maybe he can become an edge. And again, sadly, as this returning theme with Philadelphia, if anyone can get the best out of him, it's probably Philly. They've done it with an international player like Jordan Mailata, and you made him from a rugby star to one of the best and highest paid offensive tackles, left tackles in the NFL. And if I trust anyone to get the best out of Uar Bernard, it is Philadelphia. But that is going to be a jump, going from never played football to NFL impact. I don't know if he can do that, but Philly is trying it, and for a 7th round pick, I don't mind that at all. With their final 7th round pick, they get Keyshawn James Newby, edge out of New Mexico. He's basically been in the FCS for his entire career. He's been very productive in the FCS. Multiple double-digit sack seasons, a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of impact. He's 6'1", short arms, and there's a reason why he didn't play at the FBS level. So this is a productive guy who doesn't have necessarily the athleticism or the traits that you would normally see for an NFL pass rusher. It's a 7th round pick. They're trying to bet on him. And this is kind of the opposite of Uar Bernard. Uar Bernard has all of the athleticism in the world, has never played football. And then you have Keyshawn James Newby, who doesn't have all the athleticism in the world, but has been productive when he has played football. So hopefully one of those two works out for Philly. And I like this draft. Now, my question is, how much stock do I put into my Makai Lemon, Eli Stowers? Are they a fit? And I'm going to say, I'm going to give this stock. Unless I see Jalen Hurts change how he's played quarterback over the last 6 years, I'm going to give this a B. Just a straight B. Because if Makai Lemon and Eli Stowers play what I assume the type of roles that they play, which is in the middle of the field, that's where they're at their best. And if Hurts can't get the best out of them, and they're forced to run some more deep shots and more outside the numbers, I don't know if that is a way to maximize their abilities. Now, Markel Bell, I really like as a player, and I like this value for Philly. Cole Payton, I think, is a reach. Michael Morris is fine, and then the rest of the 7th rounders are kind of like, fine. So, I'm giving it a B. Now, I could be wrong. Jalen Hurts could either change, or they could excel at the roles that Jalen Hurts is kind of used to, and the type of players that he's used to. And then this is an A, maybe even A+ if they become incredible. And if Uar Bernard becomes this like freak of nature who's somehow wrecking it at the NFL level, this would be an A+ draft. But I'm a little bit more reserved at this, and I don't love how they did not touch defense until the 7th round. Picks 1 through 6, all offense. And I understand their offense was a liability last year, but how much of that was offensive play calling? How much of that was Jalen Hurts? How much of that was his behind-the-scenes discontent with A.J. Brown? So my question is, are you sure this defense is good enough that you don't have to touch it? You'd be like, this is it. This is our defense. This is how it is. I understand you got Jonathan Grenard, who's a great pass rusher, who had an off year last year, and I assume is going to get back to his former self. But even with that, so he's on one side. Who's your second pass rusher? Nolan Smith? He doesn't scare me. He's like 240 pounds. He doesn't scare me. Now, interior-wise, you're good. Linebacker-wise, you're pretty good. But Zach Bond took a step back last year. Not an egregious step back that you're like, oh, we should have paid him all the money, but a step back. Rick Woolen is a huge upgrade over whoever you had at number 3 corner last year, but you have lost Reed Blankenship. And Philly has been one of the least injured teams in the league in the last 2 years. And if history has told me anything, it's that injuries are a pendulum and it's eventually going to swing in the other direction. And I don't know if they can withstand a draft where you only pick 3 7th-round picks for defense. I don't know. So that's another reason why I'm giving them a B. I'm a little suspicious here. Maybe Howie Roseman knows more than me. Howie Roseman probably knows more than me. But I'm a little suspicious there. Now we're going to finish off with my Washington Commanders. Now, I did a full episode breakdown. It was like 30 minutes long on these Commanders. So if you want to watch that, it'll be like up here, or I'll put it, I don't know, somewhere up here. So if you want to watch that, and if you're interested in a full-on breakdown, I will leave that up here. But now I'm just going to do a quick summary of my thoughts. So Sonny Styles at 7, I think, is a steal. I did not think he was going to get there at 7. Thank God. Tennessee thought Cardinal Tate was the better player than Sonny Styles. They selected him with the 4th overall pick. And they continue to do stuff like that. And Washington gets Sonny Styles, who I think is a perfect match with Dan Quinn and exactly what this defense needed. He can be our leader. Washington does not have stars on this team, okay? We had 2 years ago, all we had was Terry. Then we drafted Jaden, and then we traded for Larry Tunsil last year, and we had 3 stars, and they were all on the offensive side of the ball. Now, hopefully, Sonny Styles can become that star on the defensive side of the ball, can become that green dot, can become that leader. And linebacker was a huge hole for Washington. I love Bobby, future Hall of Famer. I'm so proud to say that Bobby Wagner was on my team for 2 years. And with that, he could not cover, which makes sense. He's old. But Sonny Styles is the epitome of the athletic, modern linebacker. He's 6'5", 240, ran a 4.4, jumped 43.5 inches, which is just mind-boggling. And he seems like an absolute gem of a human, a great person. He seemed so excited to be in Washington. He said he kind of had a feeling that whole day before that he was going to be in Washington. And his father on the combine texted London Fletcher, who works for the Commanders and obviously should be a Hall of Fame linebacker, but was a all-pro linebacker for the Washington Redskins for a bunch of years there. And he texted Sonny Styles' father, Lorenzo Styles, texted London saying that he would actually hope that Sonny would go to the Commanders. This was in February for his combine. So overall, it just seemed like an absolute marriage between the two. Washington absolutely wanted to have him. He wanted to come to Washington. Position of need. Defense as a whole was a position of need. So absolutely love the pick. Now at 71, with Antonio Williams, I don't know if he's the player who I would have wanted to take at 71. Washington basically started the run of receivers. Now, if you remember, Malachi Fields, I think, went 74 overall, so this is 71. I would have liked, as I said before, the Bells, so Chris Bell, Skylar Bell, would have liked them more. Chad Hurst, I for sure would have liked more. But Antonio Williams is a very, very good route runner, dependable, tougher than he looks. He's 5'11", 187, 185, so you'd like for him to add a little bit more weight. But everyone says he was a great leader in Clemson. It was not the reason why things turned upside down for them this past year. He had a great year 2 years ago, had over 900 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns. This past year, only 600 yards receiving, but how much of that is Cade Klubnik? Not a huge fan of Cade. We'll get to that later. And he was coming into the year as one of the top receivers in the draft. Also had a disappointing year, as did most of the Clemson team. But I think this is a player who can play in the slot. If maybe that's what David Blau is kind of envisioning. He's ceiling maybe an Amon-Ra type, just a ton of volume, and he can get open, and he's good with yards after the catch. And I'm going to trust David Blau. I'm going to give benefit of the doubt. Even though I would have liked other players more, I'm not mad. I don't think this is a bad receiver. I just maybe would have liked other players a little bit more. Joshua Josephs, with a 5th-round pick, I thought was an absolute steal. The players who I was thinking at that time to kind of determine who I would have wanted was Joshua Josephs was for sure one of them. Jalen Kilgore, who I don't understand how he was available in the 5th round, and Keith Abney. Keith Abney's a little bit smaller, so I kind of understand why Washington didn't do that, but secondary is a huge need and continues to be a huge, gigantic need because we did not touch that in this draft. But Joshua Josephs, I thought could have been a 3rd-round pick. I thought he was going to get picked on day 2. Not only was he not picked on day 2, he wasn't picked until the 2nd round of day 3. So 5th-round pick. He is an extremely long, athletic edge. He's over 34-inch arms. He's more of a speed rusher, more of a designated pass rusher at this point in time. He played for a Tennessee team, so even though his stats aren't mind-blowing, I think he only had like 4 or 5 sacks this past year, it is because this is a Tennessee team that rotates their defensive linemen. He only played about a third of the snaps. So if you think about if he's on a different defense, that's more normal, and you play about 2/3 of the snap, the production probably goes much, much higher. So I think he's landed a perfect spot with Washington. He's going to probably be the number 6 edge rusher on this depth chart. He can spend this time to develop, hone in on the details, maybe add some muscle mass, so then next year he can be a maybe borderline 3 edge. I think he can help out this Washington team this year, but maybe won't make a huge impact, and it's a 5th round pick, so that's fine. Now, a player who I do think is going to make a pretty big impact, and that's Kaytron Allen, aka Fat Man. This was a player who had over 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns with Penn State. Now, he's not uber athletic, and he's not great in the underwear Olympics, but I don't care. Bro gets 6 yards a carry. If you stack the box, if you don't stack the box, it doesn't matter. That's what I need in my backfield. I got Bill, who's going to be my more every down back, who can break the home run. Doesn't have elite speed, but as we saw against Dallas, he can do it when necessary. We got Rachaad White, who is our pass-catching back. We got McNichols, who's our special team / backup to Rachaad White. Jerome Ford is now really competing for a roster spot. And Kaytron Allen, who could be our first and second down back. He's okay catching the ball. He's great in pass pro, and he can just run up the field. Can get you some short yardage first downs, short yardage touchdowns. It doesn't matter. I love this pick. I thought this was amazing value in the 6th round. Now, with our second 6th round pick, Washington finally addresses the center spot. The problem with center is that we had Nick Allen-Greedy, who has never been a full-time center, and we had no one else behind him. So what are the chances that an offensive lineman doesn't get hurt during the season? Not extremely high. Now, if that offensive lineman does get hurt during the season and you don't have a backup, that's bad. But if you don't have a backup who can't snap the ball, that's worse, because that just means turnovers and fumbles, and the offense is going to be off-key, and it's going to be trash. So the fact that we have a player who can now also snap the ball, I think is extremely important for Washington, and I think he can compete, maybe not in his rookie year, that's a lot to ask for of a 6th round pick, but maybe in the future he can compete to become starting center for Washington. He played guard at Wake Forest for his previous 2 years, and then this last season he moved over to Michigan State and was a center there, was a team captain, overall really good player, and good value in the 6th round. Now, 7th round, Washington took Ethan, I'm not saying his last name, Ethan over here seems to be a guy who they love. They brought him in for a top 30 visit. Do you just bring in someone to be like Jane Daniels' friend? Isn't that why you have Sam Hartman? He just seems to be that he's there to be Jane Daniels' best friend. So I don't really think that's worth a 7th round pick, but it's not my money. It's Josh Harris's money. I would have rather take Garrett Nussmeier, who is available at this point in time, or Luke Altmaier, who is also available at this point in time. But it's a 7th round pick who's going to be our backup or 3rd string quarterback. I'm not losing sleep over this. Overall, I give this an A- for Washington. Sonny Styles is an A++. Joshua Josephs, I also think is an A. Kaytron Allen, I also think is an A+. And then you got Golban, who's solid, probably an A-ish. Antonio Williams, B. And then Ethan, probably like a C+. But I think with all those A+, a C for a 7th round pick is not going to weigh that much against the grade scale. So I'm giving this an A- for Washington. Now again, if you want to hear a little bit more in depth, I just went in for a couple of minutes here. I did like a 30-minute breakdown on these guys. You can go and check that out up there. All right, moving on to the AFC East. We're going to start off with Buffalo. Buffalo had a surprising large amount of picks. They basically picked multiple in every round that they did in fact pick in. So they traded back in the 1st round, and they got TJ Parker, which I thought was amazing value, just to add like a 3rd really solid edge in that rotation. You have Greg Rousseau, you have Bradley Chubb, and now TJ Parker. Just solid edge. Maybe you don't have the highest ceilings ever, but TJ Parker, I think, should have been a 1st round pick, and the fact that you got him with the 35th overall pick, in my opinion, was a steal. Now, I thought they reached a little bit with Davison Igbinosun from Ohio State. He's 6'2", good size, good speed. I think he ran like a 4.4, but he has huge penalty problems. It got better last year, but it went from like a huge problem to only kind of a problem, and the referees are only more harsh in the NFL. So I think this was a little rich. End of the 2nd, I probably would have been more of an end of the 3rd, top of the 4th. So don't love it, don't hate it, but don't love it at all. Now they get Jude Bowery, who I thought was really good value here in the 4th round. He has an extremely high ceiling, is a developmental tackle, and as I said before, you need an offensive lineman in basically every draft you do, so they get it here in the 4th round. They get Skylar Bell, who was an absolute steal here in the 4th. As I said before, I would have liked him at Washington at 71. The fact that he was available over 50 picks later was crazy. Now, I do think he's a little bit similar to DJ Moore. They're both kind of receivers who can line up all over the field. They can do gadgets, but they could also run routes. He was extremely uber productive at UConn last year. He had over 100 receptions, a ton of yards, just a ton of numbers flying everywhere. The fact that he made it to the 4th, shocking. This whole draft, there was a ton of shocks of players who fell and other players who were picked earlier. In my opinion, David Igbinosun is one of those, but they got Skylar Bell, so that kind of evens it out. Now, Caleb Elmar, or linebacker of TCU, very athletic. Has the size, the range, the speed that you want, doesn't have the instincts that you want. So I think day one he comes to be a very, very good special teams player. Maybe he has a upside at linebacker. 4th round's a little rich for me, but not something I'm going to lose sleep over. Now, in the 5th round, Jalen Kilgore, one of the absolute steals of this draft. Safety, nickel, hybrid. He's like 6'1", 210, runs like a 4.4. I'm gonna go look at his stats. Guys, like this, the fact that this man was available in the 5th round, he's teammates of Nickham and Worry. That doesn't mean he's going to be Nickham and Worry. Okay, but normally the NFL likes to do copycat, and he's the closest copycat that you can get. Yeah, 6'1.5", 210, almost 33-inch arms. That's like edge rusher type arms. Then he ran a 4.4 at the combine, 10-10 broad, 37-inch vert, a 1.56 10-yard split. Guys, athletic freak. He had solid production for South Carolina. And guess what? Nickham Noor didn't have crazy production, which is why he went in the 2nd round. If he had better production, he would have undoubtedly been a 1st-round pick with that combine performance. And I don't understand how Kilgore lasted into the 5th round. Now, Zane Durant is their other 5th-round pick. This is giving me like Ed Oliver vibes. He's a shorter, smaller, lighter, penetrating defensive tackle. So maybe this is kind of redundancy in case Ed Oliver gets hurt. 5th-round pick, okay. I don't know if this necessarily fills a hole that they have. Maybe just gives them kind of some injury security. Now, 7th-round pick, Torian Pride, kind of reminds me of Maxwell Harrison. A little smaller, lighter weight. He's like 5'10", 180. I think Harrison was like 5'11", 185, but similar type player. He ran a 4.32 40. Maxwell Harrison, I think, ran in the 4.2s. I think ran 4.28. I don't remember fully, but he was in the high 4.2s. Pride is in the low 4.3s, so similar kind of build, similar speed, similar strengths and weaknesses. Again, this kind of seems like redundancy. I don't know if I love that, having 2 picks that are kind of redundancy for players already on this team. I think this team has more holes than what they are maybe willing to see, and that you don't just need to draft players to protect yourself from injury, you need to also improve on the players that you do have. They draft a punter in the 7th round, they could go for it, and then a guard with their final pick, the 7th round. Now, this is curious for me, because Zane Durant and Torian Pride, as I said before, seem like more redundancy picks. But then Kilgore and Skylar Bell are such great value. So is TJ Parker. But then Igbinosun, I think, is a little bit of a reach. And so is Caleb Elmar Orr. I think I'm going to give them a B+. They had 10 picks, and I think a solid third of them were steals. I think a lot of these players are going to help them and start. Like TJ Parker, David Igbinosun, Skylar Bell, Kilgore. I think those are 4 starters for you. Caleb Elmar Orr is going to be a player who has a role for you. Jude Bowery maybe can develop, and he has a very high ceiling, so I like that. You got a punter, that's a starter for you. So like I think B+ is solid. It's a good draft. It's not a great draft. Maybe if they would have kept that higher pick, they could have gone someone a little bit more explosiveness. Nothing really here jumps out. Like Kilgore's good. He's probably the one who jumps out to me the most. Skylar Bell being so similar to DJ Moore is just kind of unfortunate that he was the one who happened to fall, but you have to pick up a player of this caliber in the 4th round with the 125th overall pick. Like, yes. So overall, I think pretty good value. You have a lot of starters here who can help you, and you have protected yourself from injury, but is that enough to take you to the next step? I don't know. All right, now we're going to Miami Dolphins. Wow. This draft, I'm like bipolar looking at this draft. Some picks I love, and some picks I loathe, like truly loathe. Starting us off, Caden Proctor. Now, is this because they traded back and they could have gotten Caleb Downs? So instead, Dallas got Caleb Downs. Maybe. Maybe a little bit. But also, you think the difference of football player between Caleb Downs and Caden Proctor is 2 5th-round picks? Are you dumb? Are you dumb? Because that seems dumb. Caden Proctor is a good player. He is inconsistent. He fluctuates of like between 60 pounds, which is kind of important. Are you like 340? or 330? Or are you 390? That's kind of a difference. Almost 4 bills. That's kind of unplayable. And it seems to me that he's not necessarily always self-motivating in that way to keep him at a lower weight. He plays much better when he's in the 340, 350 range than he does when he's 390. Not shocking. But if you're an NFL player, you need to be self-motivating enough that you can control yourself. And whether it's working out enough or eating right, I don't know. But that is alarm bells everywhere. And with the 12th overall pick, I understand this was a weaker class. With the 12th overall pick, you would want someone who probably doesn't have those questions, especially with Caleb Downs staring you in the face, like, what are we doing? Now, Chris Johnson's a very good player. This was around the range he was expected to go. Miami did trade up like 3 picks to get him, which I don't know if I necessarily love. He's not necessarily the most physically talented corner. He did run a 4.4, and kudos to him, that's great. But he's more of a zone cover corner, likes to see things in front of him, not necessarily a bump and run, because I don't think he has the speed to catch up to receivers like that. Now, he's a very smart corner, and he's going to help elevate this defense. Also, this team is bad, so you need starters at every possible position, and getting a corner and a tackle are 2 very valuable positions, so I get that. So I don't hate it. It's not my favorite pick, but this is still on the plus scale. Like, I do like this pick. Now, at the second round, Jacob Rodriguez, like, amazing. 10 out of 10, great, 43 overall, an amazing linebacker, turnover machine. His one weakness is basically tackling, because he's great at coverage, and as I said, great at creating turnovers, but he's a little bit of a smaller frame. He doesn't really wrap up quite as well. Now, in the division with Stevenson and James Cook, that might be Breece Hall, that might be a little bit more of a problem, but if you can turn the ball over, you don't care as much. Similar to corners who are ultra aggressive. They might let a 70-yard bomb over their head, but they're also going to intercept the ball. And this is on a much smaller negative take of, instead of, letting a 60-yard touchdown over your head, you maybe miss a tackle. But you still get the same result, which is a turnover, so Jacob Rodriguez, great player. Now, I do not like Caleb Douglas with a 3rd-round pick, 75th overall. Like, guys, I had him in, like, the 6th round. Am I crazy? No, tell me, am I crazy having him? Because I'm starting to, like, doubt myself, but I really had him, like, deep in day 3. Now, he's athletic, he has the size, but over Chris Bell, which we'll get to later, over Skylar Bell, over even Bryce Lance, crazy to me. This was an egregious reach. And then right after that, tight end from Ohio State. You're like, oh, that's got to be good. He was the backup tight end in Ohio State, and you're taking him in the 3rd round with the 87th overall pick? This is kind of reminding me of Washington's 2024 draft, where we got Jaden at the top, and we were like hype as heck. And then we had all of these like 2nd and 3rd round picks, and we ended up drafting Ben Sennett in the 2nd round, and it was like, oh, because maybe he'll be Kyle Juszczyk. I'm like, okay, if I knew he was Kyle Juszczyk, I would not draft him anywhere near the 2nd round. And he has not lived up to the hype. So I don't understand getting a backup tight end in the 3rd round. Like, I understand you have a lot of picks, but maybe use those picks on players who maybe have higher ceilings than Will Casemaker. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly. That's a backup tight end. I understand Ohio State, but a backup tight end. Then they hit it out of the park with Chris Bell at 94 overall. Like, how is he available this late? I understand he just torn ACL, but by all accounts, he is ahead of schedule. He's an athletic freak. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. I would have loved him at 71, but Miami gets him at 94. Trey Moore and Kyle Lewis were their linebackers in the 4th. Kyle Lewis is a great athletic, very good coverage linebacker, borderline safety linebacker, hybrid type player. Getting him in the 4th I thought was great value. Then Michael Taft in the 5th. Pretty solid, safety out of Texas, solid dude, 5th round, probably more or less where he was projected to go. Kevin Coleman, another receiver, because guess what? They need receivers. Solid pick in the 5th, another tight end in the 5th, DJ Campbell, guard in the 6th, and then an edge in the 7th. I'm going to be honest, I did not love this draft. There was too many bad picks, like straight up bad picks. And I understand they had like 13 picks this draft. It was a lot of picks. So I get that, and maybe some people would say they're going to give them higher draft grade because they have all these picks, and it means you're going to have a lot more production from this draft. But I also think if you have all these picks, yeah, you're going to pick up some guys who fall because you have all these picks. Like Chris Bell, you had a higher chance to pick up Chris Bell than any other team because you had 13 draft picks and 3 in the 3rd round. Like, this is not shocking. Kyle Lewis, like, eventually do get credit for picking players who just fell into your lap. And time and time again, it seems like you're overdrafting. So I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt. I'm giving them a B. But I honestly want to go C+. Like, honestly. But I do love Jacob Rodriguez, and I love Chris Bell, and I love Kyle Lewis, and Chris Johnson. So I can't give them a C plus because that's already like 4 players who could start for you and make impacts. But I'm gonna give them a B. But this is me not liking this B. I'm being nice. I feel like I'm being really nice this episode, and I don't know if that'll continue. All right, we did Buffalo, we did Miami. All right, New England. New England, your time to shine. Now, New England didn't have a monstrous amount of picks. They had a solid amount of picks, a lot on day 3. Like, they only had 3 day 2 picks, and then they had 6 day 3 picks. They get Caleb Lomu in the first round. They trade up a couple spots to get him at pick 28. He is a good player, tackles in need. Now, my question is, what are they doing with him? Because he seems to be a left tackle only type player. Morgan Moses is old, but he's still playing well. He's on the right side. Will Campbell, they have been pretty apparent in saying he's sticking on the left and they're not moving him to guard. So are their options there? Will sticks at left, Caleb goes to right. Though that's in training camp, he beats out Morgan Moses, or just sometime throughout the season. And then Morgan Moses is a backup swing tackle. Or maybe he just sits his first year. Or does he unseat Will on the left side and Will does move inside to guard? So this is a good pick, and I think an important pick, and a pick that they needed to make. I just don't know what they're doing with their offensive line. So this is not something against Caleb Lomu. I'm just curious to see what New England does with their offensive line this coming year. Gabe Yakas, if you've listened to my previous episodes, absolutely love him. 55 is a steal. I would have taken him at like 25. Love it. They traded up for him. Love it even more. They saw him. They wanted him. They got him. Amazing. He's a wrestler. He's athletic. He has a 159, which is an elite get off. He is productive. It's just great player. Great all-around player. This is a need for New England. Position of value, position of need. He's going to step in day 1 and be a starting edge rusher. Like, that's what's going to happen. He's going to be productive. And this is just great pick for New England. A++++. Love it. Third rounder, Eli Raridon. Okay, tight end for Notre Dame, which means you know he can block. He's going to be a 3-down tight end. Maybe he's the heir apparent to Hunter Henry. That makes sense. Third rounder, solid. Not going to complain. Now, Prunty. I'm going to be honest. I don't know much about him. From what I can read up on, he was not projected to be picked in the 5th round. Was more like a borderline undrafted free agent. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. But little suspicious of that pick. Don't love it. Demetrius Crownover is a very high ceiling tackle. He's a developmental tackle. So this does give me more questions on Will Campbell. Now, on day 3, you're just picking best player available. So it's not necessarily you're drafting for need. But they got now 2 tackles, and if you are lucky and Crownover hits and he develops, this is again leading me to believe that Will Campbell would be moving inside. So just another something to add to the equation of will Campbell slide inside or will they stay at left tackle? Now they got a linebacker of TCU, who's just one of those like solid, dependable linebackers, not overly athletic, but probably give you special teams plus, and maybe can come in and cover some snaps for you. A team like New England, where you have like Robert Spillane, and these just kind of like tough, not super athletic, assignment-driven linebackers, I think he fits right in, so that makes a lot of sense. And then get a backup quarterback, formerly of Texas Tech, 7th round, that's fine. Jam Miller I thought was good value here in the 7th. Bama was a really awful run team last year. I think that was more offensive line-driven, and less so Jam Miller. I think he's a talented player, so I like that. Then Quintavious Hutchins has not started a lot, is really light, he's like 230. Maybe he can develop. This is a 7th round pick, so it's all good. Overall, this draft for New England, this Gabe Yakas pick is giving them huge pluses. I'd give this a B+. Caleb Bloom, I think, is a good pick. Yakas, good pick. Raridon, solid. Now, Prunty, questionable. Crownover's good. And then the rest of the picks are just kind of like solid or good value. So I'm giving this a B+. If I had more clarity about Caleb Lomu and what he can do day 1 for this team and get some answers on Prunty, like why he was here in the 5th round, I could be wrong. Maybe I just completely missed him in the process. But maybe then it would go into the A's. But until then, I think it's more of a B-ish draft. All right, last but not least. They were second to least last year, but they were not least. And that is the New York Football Jets. We did the Giants, now we're on to the Jets. So they had 3 first-round picks, a second, and then just nothing until day 3. So they did have picks, but just not evenly spread out across the draft. They had David Bailey, who went 2nd overall. Not a big fan, so that is going to affect their draft grade. Kenyon Sadiq. Really like the player, like the value at 16, don't like the fit. They drafted Mason Taylor in the 2nd round last year. Now you're using a top of the 2nd pick and a 1st round pick for tight ends. I don't think that's great value. I don't think that's great resource allocation. Amari Cooper Jr. with the 30th overall pick was amazing value. Need everything you want. If you flip the picks, I still wouldn't love it, because I don't think you use 2 top 50 picks on tight ends in back-to-back years. I just don't love that. Pons I do love, as does everyone, okay? Like, this is no surprise. Angelo Pons, second round. They also traded back and still got him. Love it. They needed more oomph on that defense, and D'Angelo Pons will give them that. Adding to that defense, Joel Jackson is a massive, massive interior defensive lineman. He does need to develop more, which is why he was there in the 4th round. But he had a solid season for Florida State. There's not many people in the world who look like him and who are as athletic as he is, so you're betting on the upside there. I don't mind that at all. Cade Klubnik, I do mind. First of all, why? Why? You're a Jets team, okay? Now with the offensive pieces that they have added, this is actually, like, minus quarterback, a pretty good offense. They have a solid offensive line, top to bottom. Breece Hall, good running back. Now you have Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper Jr., A.D. Mitchell. You got 2 tight ends in Sadiq and Mason Taylor. Like, this is a good team. Why are you adding a quarterback? First of all, you want a quarterback next year. Secondly, Cade Klubnik is not the guy you want. I'm sorry, he had a really, really awful couple years, or last year, in Clemson. The year before that, he was projected to be even better than he was. If you just want, like, a backup type, I don't know if Cade Klubnik is your, like, backup type. And if you do want a backup, don't take one in the 4th round. Nussmeier was there in the 7th round. Altmaier was there in the 7th round. Like, why? Why? I do not like this pick at all. And also, if Geno Smith does suck and you have to bench him, which honestly is probably, like, best case scenario for Jets fans, so you can still get a top pick next year, then you don't want a rookie who maybe I'm wrong and maybe is good. Like, go and take whoever the heck is off the street or whoever your backup is. Mike White or Bailey Zappi. I don't even know if those are your backup quarterbacks. I'm just naming random dudes who I remember playing in Jet games. Like, have one of those and hopefully they throw for 120 passing yards and you lose the game and get a better draft pick. Like, what's the goal here? Cade Klubnik, I don't get it. So, big negative there at 4. Inez Cooper, huge, massive guard from Miami, not extremely mobile and athletic, but massive dude, 6th round pick. It's all good. VJ Penn in the 7th, I thought was a steal. I wanted Washington to get him in the 7th round. He's one of those big nickel type. He's like 6'2" and athletic and big and fast and strong and all of that. I don't know how he lasted into the 7th round. That was a absolutely great pick for the Jets. So if we're just going to go over the picks again. David Bailey, I think, is a reach. I would have liked him middle of the 1st. That was just me. I understand the whole NFL basically disagreed with me, and that's fine. But this is my grades, so that is going to affect this grade. Now, Kenyan Sadiq, as I said before, that's too much resource. That's too rich for me. Too many tight ends, too high in drafts. Omar Cooper Jr., great, 10 out of 10. Pons, great, 10 out of 10. Darnell Jackson, great pick. Cade Klubnik, no. Cooper, fine. VJ Payne, great. I'm gonna give this a B-. He's the 2nd overall pick. Okay, Bailey's the 2nd overall pick, and I don't like it. So if you have someone who's the 2nd overall pick and I don't like, and then you have the 16th overall pick, where I'm not a fan of with this team, plus you got Cade friggin' Klubnik here, like, that's gonna bring it down. B-. Sorry. You might not like it, but it is what it is. Alright, that was it for today. We did the AFC East and the NFC East. Let me know what you think. Who do you think had a better draft or worse draft? Do you think I was too harsh? Do you think I was too nice? I am curious to know your thoughts on this. Next week, we'll be doing other divisions. We're eventually going to go through all 32 teams. Don't worry. This was a little bit of a longer episode, probably a little bit longer than I would have wanted. Then again, it's the real off-season, so what better things do we have than to talk about football? My answer, nothing. Football is life. So I hope you enjoy your weekend, and if you're curious about the other divisions in the NFL, then please think about liking and subscribing, and staying tuned for the next episodes of The Fan's Perspective.